Infinitives are a lot like participles in Latin. They share a lot of characteristics, and so their formation should be more like a variation on a participle theme, rather than a completely new topic. An infinitive is a non-conjugated verb form. When a verb has a subject, a person, and number, you limit it, and it's said to be finite. An infinitive doesn't have a subject. In fact, in many instances, an infinitive acts as a noun. Okay, so it's not a person, place, or thing, but a better and more comprehensive definition of a noun is any word that can act as a subject or object of a verb. And infinitives can definitely do this. Errare est humanum. To err is human. Where the infinitive errare is the subject of est. More on that later, though. It's important to know for now that we don't conjugate infinitives, and that a simple English translation of them will begin with the word to. And just like participles, infinitives have a tense and a voice. This chart should look familiar with voice, active and passive along the top, and tense, present, perfect, and future, which by the way refer more to relative time periods than to specific times, along the side. Let's give the infinitives for the first conjugation verb amo, amare, amavi, amatus. All first conjugation infinitives are formed the same way. So we normally start with the present active. This is the second principal part, so we just bring it down and fill the box. It's present and active, so we don't have to do too much to the translation. To love. The present passive infinitive is the second principal part with the ending ari rather than are. It's passive, so we need to make our translation passive. To be loved. The perfect active infinitive is the third principal part without the I. This is the perfect stem, with the ending issa. Its translation is to have loved, amawissa. This should remind you of one of the ways to translate the regular perfect tense verb, by the way. The perfect passive infinitive is the fourth principal part, the perfect passive participle, plus essa, the infinitive of sum. And our translation is to have been loved. That should make sense. We'll finish off with the future active infinitive. This is the future active participle plus essa, amaturus essa. As you can probably guess, its translation is to be going to love. The future passive infinitive technically exists in Latin, but it's so rarely used that it's really only important to point out that it isn't important to point out. If you really want to know, the future passive infinitive of amo is amatum iri, to be going, to be loved. Each conjugation is mostly the same as this. Here's our second conjugation verb, moneo. You can and should pause the video to be sure to write these down. Third conjugation verbs have a slight change in one of their forms. Since the first E in the era present active ending is short, the entire ending falls away in the present passive. So dicere, to say, goes to diki, to be said. The same is true for third IO verbs like capio. But fourth conjugation verbs like audio are just like the others. Deponent verbs are a little different. They only have one infinitive per tense. So check out the infinitives for hortor. The present infinitive hortari, to urge, looks passive. The perfect infinitive hortatus essa, to have urged, also looks passive. But the future infinitive hortaturus essa, to be going to urge, looks active. So, deponents are verbs that look passive but are translated actively, with three exceptions. Their present and future participles look active and are translated actively. Their gerundive, that's the future passive participle, looks passive and is translated passively. And their future infinitive looks active and is translated actively. Okay, next we'll look at how infinitives are used in sentences in Latin. It's a bit more varied than how we use infinitives in English, and a bit more fun.